morning, ladies and gentlemen, or good afternoon, depending on where you are joining from. We are glad to have you here today in this session, in this online session, in which we are discussing the renewable energy opportunities in Turkey. It's a huge market for renewable energy, hopefully in the future. And we have with us today two super experts in the topic, which I'm really looking forward to hear from. And I'd like to start this webinar by asking both of them to introduce themselves. So, Yael, first, could I ask you to unmute your microphone and introduce yourself, please? For some reason, it doesn't seem like I can hear you, Yael. Hang on. Let me see. Can you talk again? I can't hear you. Okay, let's do one thing. Adjust your microphone, and I'm going to ask Onur to, in the meanwhile, to just take your Yes, could you introduce yourself?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm Onur Gündürü from Onur Energy. We are working as consultants for international funds and local investors. Typically, we try to help them to invest in Turkey or inspect the projects that they are doing in Turkey for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Onur. Can I ask you, where are you joining from today?
We are joining from Turkey and specifically Izmir, the windiest place in Turkey.
In the windiest place, excellent. So this is a very good renewable energy area. What about you, Yael? See if we can hear you now. No, still cannot hear you. It's not just me, right? Onur, you can't hear her either.
I cannot also hear.
Okay, so let's try again. It's probably just your microphone. If you adjust, it should be okay. Did you change anything? Because we could hear you perfectly before in the training. No? Okay, let's do the following, okay? If you can just go, maybe exit the room and come back in. Oh, can you talk to me now? Yeah?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Excellent.
Okay, thank you. I just got some help.
Excellent.
Okay, so
perfect. This is working live, right? We're live, so this is what happens. Okay, can you introduce yourself, Michelle?
So I will reintroduce myself. My name is Yael Taranto. I work at SHURA Energy Transformation Center in Istanbul, in Turkey. And I worked previously for 22 years at the Industrial Investment Bank of Turkey, dealing mainly with renewable energy projects, green financing, sustainable development. So this is my area. And would you like me to say a few words about SHURA?
Yes, please do, so that people know, what you work on.
Exactly. I had it as part of my presentation, but I will give you a preview now. Basically, SHURA is a Turkish think tank with international partners as well, focusing on the energy transformation of Turkey.
And where are you joining from today?
Istanbul.
Istanbul, excellent.
I'm at home.
You're at home, and we've got two parts of Turkey represented, and I am actually joining from Madrid, and we've got someone joining from Munich today, and I know there are more of you, so please tell us where you're joining from, so join into the conversation. And I would ask, Yael, please, can you share your screen, and let's begin with the presentations. So the way we're going to do this today is very simple. Yael is going to present first, then Onur is going to present, and once they both present, then we'll go to the next, the questions and answers. The Q&A you can answer through the little icon at the bottom. You can send them to us and we will pick them up thereafter. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you're ready to go, so go for it.
All right. Okay, so hello again. We're here to talk about renewable energy opportunities in Turkey. Just a few words about what SHURA, where I work, does. Our mission is to contribute to the debate on Turkey's energy transition. And we are basically a transparent platform. And what we try to do is actually stimulate discussion. And how we do that, and what we do is basically we provide fact-based, unbiased, and independent research and analysis, covering such areas as technology, economics, and policies. And our founding partners are Sabancı University's International Policy Center, the European Climate Foundation, and Agora Energie Wende, which is a research institution based in Germany. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about what is the strategic direction of Turkey when it comes to energy, what the main issues are that we're dealing with. The first issue is energy security. Now, Turkey's energy demand grows by about 4 to 5% per year, and there's a great deal of import dependence from such countries as Russia, Iran, and Iraq. And there's also some imported coal, but mostly imported gas, natural gas and oil from these countries. And how does that affect us? Our energy imports was something like $36 billion in 2017 alone. And it has grown, it has a major, it forms a major share of our deficit, of our current account deficit. So Turkey has a current account deficit of more than $50 billion. And most of that, a great portion of that is imported fossil fuels. Now, what does the energy sector do in Turkey? When we come to renewable energy, again, we import most of the equipment. We're a net importer of energy supply equipment in all parts. On the other hand, we're developing our own industry now. And in the renewable sector in Turkey, there's an estimated 84,000 people employed out of some 767,000 people employed in the energy sector in Turkey. These are direct and indirect jobs, including like all the accessories, etc., for energy supply. Now, our other issue is the environment. Because why do we have to go through this energy transition? Because number one, the world is going through it, but number two, we have our own problems. For example, there are only 6 cities out of 81 in Turkey that meet air pollution criteria set by the World Health Organization. So we need to do this to become healthier as a country. And we also have premature deaths related to emissions, etc. Another issue, of course, is our carbon dioxide emissions. Turkey is the 20th larger emitter of carbon dioxide of greenhouse gases in Turkey. That's not an issue because if you come to it, 20th largest means around 1%, but then it's growing very fast. We're actually the fastest growing country in greenhouse gas emissions. So this is where we're standing strategically. Okay, if we go to our primary energy supply, focusing on Turkey, our primary energy supply is something around 136 million tons of oil equivalent. And it's almost evenly divided between oil, gas, and coal. So our renewables portfolio is small when we come to primary energy supply. Now, when we come to resources in the country, we have very little fossil fuel resources to speak of. It's mostly lignite, which is low calorie and high sulfur. So when we come to producing our own energy, we really have an opportunity in renewables. It's good for us now that the cost of investing in renewable energy is going down. It's becoming more mainstream as time goes by. And we have great availability. We have good hydro availability, which we're utilizing for the longest time. It's in the east and northeast of the country. We have significant wind resources in the northwest and the western part of the country. We have solar all across the country, except maybe the north of the country is a little poor in terms of sun, but even there it's better than, say, Germany, the German average. And we have good geothermal resources in the central and western parts of the country. And to repeat, we import about 75% of our fossil fuel supply. So we need renewable energy for energy independence as well as for energy security. Where we are right now. Now, Turkey has a total installed capacity. Electricity is an important part of our energy supply, of course. We have a total installed capacity as of the end of 2017, about 85 gigawatts of electricity producing capacity. It has now reached 88 gigawatts as of September of 2018, and it has grown very fast over the past 10 years or so. And generation from electricity is about 295 terawatt hours per year, probably to exceed 300, approaching 305 terawatt hours this year. And solar and wind represent a very small part of this generation. It's just 7%. It's growing, and there are many opportunities for it to grow in the years to come. Geothermal is interesting. We are fourth worldwide in our geothermal installations. We have about 1.1 gigawatts of installed capacity. It's an important resource for Turkey, but it's limited. Okay, in terms of where we're moving, there are very promising developments, especially in 2017 in wind and solar. If you look at annual additions, we have about half of our capacity additions in the past 10 years in renewables, more than half. But wind and solar, especially solar, have taken off after 2014. You can see the graph there. 2017 was a special year for renewable energy also because we had our first utility scale wind and solar auctions. And those were very competitive. The prices that emerged from these auctions are very competitive on a world scale. As you can see, and there will be new auctions coming up for both onshore and offshore wind and solar PV. These are all planned for 2019. Another thing to note about these auctions, I will talk a little bit more later on that, is that there are local content requirements in these auctions. So we also need to develop our local equipment manufacturing capacity in Turkey. Okay, as we all know, the government is, and government policies are very important in the development of renewable energy. And Turkey set targets in 2009 for 2023, which happens to be the centennial of the Turkish Republic. And if you look at the targets there, Turkey's aim, which was set and revised several times, was 30% of total electricity generation from renewables. We already reached about 33%. This will fluctuate depending on hydro because Turkey is very much dependent on hydro in its renewables portfolio, which has the largest share. We can see that in geothermal and solar PV, we're already there in terms of the 2023 targets. What happened in solar PV was a lot of the installations were in 2017 because there was a deadline by end 2017 for solar to connect to the distribution grid with a favorable fee. The connection fees have all gone up now. So we're a little slow in wind when we see our graph, if you remember our graph of the previous slide. But you know, we're moving on there. Now we have new targets. There was a new vision announced in the 2019 national budget. This is very recent. This was like the past couple of weeks or so. And we're now targeting 10 gigawatts each of wind and solar by 2027. over the next 10 years. So that means something like 1,000 megawatts each annually of these resources. Okay, now how did we end up growing in renewables so far? What was the major motivator? The major motivator, the major push there was the feed-in tariff, which is about 7.3 cents, US cents per kilowatt hour for hydro and wind, and 13.3 for solar. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. That was just an advice from the program. Don't worry. Keep going.
Oh, okay.
The only thing is that now you're not on full screen. Yeah, you have to go back to full screen.
Yes, I will do that.
It's always a little bit more complicated when you're using Zoom.
Yes. Can you see the slides well? Okay, I've gone back to full screen. Now it's fine, right?
It's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's keep moving. The feed-in tariff was the major motivator, as we said, and there are also additional premium for local production there. But this tariff is going to end at the end of 2020, which means it will end for new additions. So if you want to get this tariff, you have to get your plant up and running by the end of 2020. And the eligibility there is for 10 years. So when you have, say you have your plant running by 2020, you will get these tariffs up until 2030. And if you have local content, you will get that for 5 years. So this is how it works for the feed-in tariff. So you need to be running by the end of 2020 to be eligible for this tariff. Now, just another note on this tariff. When this was first announced in 2010, these these prices were quite modest. But things have moved so fast on the renewable energy front that these are now really, really good prices. And they're also good because they're denominated in US dollars. This is what the financiers were looking for. This is what the banks are looking for bankability, because most of the borrowing is in foreign currency terms, mostly US dollars, some euro. So this was an important motivator for moving along. Now let's see what the new regulatory framework will bring for us. Now this new regulatory framework, this is also known by its Turkish acronym YEKA, is basically what the government wanted there was large-scale renewable energy projects. There were 2 that have already taken place for 1,000 megawatts each for solar and wind. Large-scale projects, and there is land infrastructure and transmission capacity integration. So these were actually provided for the investors, and what was required for the investor was development of local equipment manufacturing capacity, plus research and development capacity in their respective areas. Especially this is true for solar PV, but also for wind. And what the aim was there was technology transfer, because in these auctions, it was also required that you have a technologically competent partner, international partner involved in the project. And the awarding is done according to if you meet all these criteria, plus if it's a competitive price based on per kilowatt hour price. So if you have you have to give the lowest price per kilowatt hour price to be eligible in this auction. And new auctions will be coming up based on similar principles. The other issues regarding local content will vary, or partnerships will vary. but they will be based on a price competition for the future as well. Okay, let's do a current assessment of the market, bringing together all these factors. Where are we standing in the electricity generation market these days? Now, demand is growing at around 4 to 5%. This will probably continue in the coming years, but this is a slowdown compared to earlier market conditions. And this has to do with the maturing of the market. You know, we've come to something around 300 terawatt hours per year. Obviously, we're not going to be growing as fast in the years to come. And there's also increased energy efficiency, for which reason demand will not be growing as fast. Now, on the supply side, we had a lot of capacity coming online, and we have some overcapacity in new additions with liberalization, with privatization, etc. And what this is doing is it's pushing out older, inefficient fossil fuel plants. We've already seen this happen, and we may see more of this happening in recent years to come. Of course, what happened to market prices, that wholesale electricity market prices have been eroding due to this oversupply and slower demand growth, plus currency devaluation. If you look at the currency equivalent of the price, what used to be around 6 to 7 US cents per kilowatt hour is around 4.5 US cents per kilowatt hour right now in the wholesale market. Now, what's happening to renewable energy prices? Remember the feed-in tariff? The feed-in tariff is now something like 2 or 3 times the market price. On the other hand, recent auction prices are actually reflecting or revealing declining costs of investment. So what we will see for sure is a decline in prices. Government officials have already been saying that they're not going to renew the feed-in tariff under the same conditions. We will see what the new feed-in tariff will be, but one thing we know for sure, it's going to be much lower than what we have now. And finance. Now, finance, there's uncertainty about new tariffs and incentives after 2020, and there are economic uncertainties across the board. So there's some reduction in access to finance. At least we can say that everybody's being more selective right now in terms of finance. So this is where the current market is standing. Now, on the other hand, we have talked about Turkey's energy transition. Turkey's energy transition is already underway. This is no longer, we're talking about some future construct. Turkey is already going through an energy transition with all these renewables connecting to the network, with lower carbon resources in electricity, with more energy efficiency, etc. We're already going through the energy transition. And what we will see over the next 10 years is probably increased electrification in heating and cooling and transportation. As is happening in other countries, we'll probably see more electric vehicles, and this will indicate sustained annual consumption increases of around 3 to 5% per year, at least over the next 10 years. So although we're saying that Turkey's total energy consumption growth may be slowing down, electrification will mean that our electricity consumption will continue sustained growth over the next 10 years or so. And renewables will probably be the first choice in new capacity additions by the private sector in years to come. This has a lot to do with incentives and etc., but it also has to do with where everybody's moving in the world. the Turkish government has plans to utilize domestic coal in electricity generation, but this will not necessarily be, in my opinion, or in the opinion of many, a detriment to renewable resources being funded. Renewables are already more competitive for funding than all sorts of domestic or international fossil fuels. So, of course, when you add renewables to the system, and especially wind and solar, the resilience and adaptability of the transmission and distribution grids will be a major issue. This will be the key. And at SHURA, we have performed a study that shows that the transmission grid can accommodate up to 3 times the currently planned wind and solar capacity. We can accommodate 40 gigawatts for sure with the current state of the transmission grid with their planned investments, etc. And this can easily go up to 60 gigawatts. And the transmission authority has confirmed the study. And they're very eager to make their plans in accordance with this study. So this is very important. We have the transmission system opportunity for renewables over the next 10 years. We also have solar PV rooftop legislation in place right now to utilize a very significant resource potential. There will probably be improvements and clarifications in this legislation, but it is a major opportunity in Turkey. And another area where there will be catalysts for change is storage, electricity storage, digitalization, innovative financial tools, and legislation. These will be the major catalysts for change. And we see the change going in that direction already. So let's talk a little bit about where the opportunities are for new businesses, new business opportunities. Rooftop solar generation, to be sure, especially in the short term, industrial and commercial rooftops will be a good opportunity. All sorts of distributed generation, financing, management, and consultancy will be an interesting area, especially for households. Combining management and financing together with consultancy will speed up the renewable installations in smaller units like households. So any kind of services related to this area will be an important opportunity. And again, smart grid solutions, especially solutions relating to two-way exchange and energy efficiency and connection to the distribution network will be very important. Distribution of small generating connection of small generation units to the distribution network. Another interesting area is sustainability management and corporate sourcing and certification. Corporations in Turkey and industrial users are increasingly becoming more and more aware of sustainability issues. Many of them are publishing integrated annual reports, reporting on their carbon footprint, and etc., and all sorts of sustainability issues. So this is an important area for development. And another area, now there's a continuing area of utility scale solar and wind generation. This will continue, although smaller units will also be proliferating across the industry. And local equipment manufacturing. Turkey already has a good regional manufacturing base for wind blades and towers. It has become a regional center there, and there's also some exporting going on. And there are a number of solar panel integrators working in Turkey right now. These are mostly assembly plants, but our first integrated plant will be completed within the next couple of years. Now, there are also some exploratory areas for investors. Investors should definitely be looking into these areas because things are moving fast in things like electricity storage, especially with electric vehicles becoming more common in the years to come. Electricity storage, equipment, system supply management, this will be a very interesting area. On the renewable energy side, now wind and solar generators are increasingly being held responsible for balancing. In years to come, we will find more balancing pressures on these generators, and curtailment at peak generation may also become an issue within the next 5 to 10 years. And with storage costs going down, this will be an interesting area for generators and for companies that will provide services to generators in this area. And of course, digital solutions, all sorts of digital solutions, microgrid, off-grid, scalability solutions, two-way trade solutions, intertrade solutions, not just between the grid and the microgenerator, but between different microgenerators and consumers and prosumers among themselves. So basically, this is where I will end my presentation, and I will be pleased to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Yael. Can you please stop sharing your screen at the top? And thank you very much for your comments. So that we allow actually Onur now to also share his screen and give us his presentation. And then we'll take questions. We have a question there, I have a couple more, so we'll see how we're doing with time, because we'll aim to have about 55 minutes for the session.
Well, can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes. Can you try sharing your screen now?
Okay, I think 55 minutes is enough for my presentation.
No, but you don't get that much. That's okay. Just try and okay. Do what you can. You're able to share the screen. Perfect. Okay. If you could put that on a large screen, perfect.
Okay. So briefly, I would like to go through. First of all, I would like to thank Yael for the presentation, and I think it really covers the Turkish market real well, because Turkey is investing in renewable energy ambitiously, let's say, from the start, and obviously there will be some changes in the feed-in tariff mechanism and some let's say regulatory details in the coming month. Let's say there are lots of works. It's a really fast progress at the moment, and people are trying to somehow balance the renewable energy production, the total energy production of Turkey, and the grid capacity, and the upcoming energy efficiency regulations in an economic manner. So it should make sense both environmentally and economically. That's important for Turkey. So if you go through gain some motivational background, let's say, the Turkish National Renewable Energy Action Plan was released a couple of years back, but there will be updates, and updates are coming real fast at the moment. But the motivation is still the same. So the aim of the renewable energy development in Turkey, and this action plan is trying to eliminate the barriers in deploying energy efficient and renewable energy in Turkey. So increasing the financial support for projects is important, and they are always trying to make the administrative process as easy as possible. That was the motivation behind the changes for smaller scale projects. For example, whether it's a 1 kilowatt solar project or 1 megawatt solar project, you are subject to the same regulation and legislation. That's why for smaller investors, it's becoming not very easy to handle all the bureaucracy behind the scenes, and they need to somehow plan it for the next couple of years if they want to allocate some capacity, because the capacities are reserved, and especially for smaller projects. This is something I will go into detail. So these issues have been addressed with the recent regulation updates, and now it's compared to past, still can say that there is I think room for progress in terms of administrative bureaucracy, and the development of the legal framework for the implementation of new solutions. This is important, and we need to, for example, there are some things in the Renewable Energy Action Plan that is indicating more utilization of, let's say, wave energy in Turkey, but it is not covered in my present. It's detailed. There is no regulation, regulatory specific details for wave energy. And providing secure access to renewable energy sources for electricity generation. This is really important, and we make grid and renewable energy work together. I think that was Ya's main point in the presentation, and we have a good grid capacity that can be utilized much more efficiently if we produce locally and distribute locally, and if we can manage the demand responses as a contingency or for efficiency, whatever motivation you have in your program, that can work for related infrastructure. This is also important, and the development of the support package programs. These were the main things, the motivation behind Renewable Energy Action Plan of Turkey. Yeah, I already mentioned the target, so I will not go into detail about this. I think it's best to skip this, and it will be, more maybe in the future, depending on the needs of the country. Just as an indicator for the solar potential of Turkey, you can make queries using the S, which is provided as a free tool by the World Bank Group. And the European Union also has another tool for this, and which is, I think, very easy to navigate and get some basic investment figures based on the statistical data. As here you can see, Turkey is actually a really good country to invest in solar, because the map is speaking for itself. If you want, you can just log into this globalsolaratlas.info, which you can compare countries and see if in terms of production of energy or harvesting energy, for example, if you are also investing in CSP technologies, if it's a good map for you or not, and you can compare countries. We have a similar solar energy potential map in Turkey. I find this a bit unfair to color, for example, Istanbul blue. That's always my problem with this solar energy potential map, which is actually, I think should be, the color should be something like this, okay? But this solar energy potential map is not an investment tool, just to be clear. This is like an indicator. You can at least get some some basic solar hours in the city. What can you produce? If you just click on any of these cities, you will get a detailed sunny hours and distribution of sunny hours. Okay, so these things could help you out with at least getting a bit more about the country when you look from satellite. this solar energy potential map has a version for the wind energy as well. For power and speed of the wind, you can just log into these we provide in the presentation. It's publicly available online. You can actually see the historical data, the map combined for let's say a high-level evaluation of these projects. However, for any kind of renewable energy investment, we always expect investors to take a look at the actual data that has been recorded on the site to some, let's say, local regulation or universal, let's say, regulation and practices in business. It's important to have local information. Solar energy is less democratic, but wind is not, so you have to be sure that you are investing in the right exact point. This is the cumulative wind energy development in Turkey. This is a report that has been, I think it's a wonderful report, by the way, publicly available again from the Turkish Wind Energy Union. So if you go to their website, you can download this report for Turkey for every year, and you can see the development for yourself. Here we are, as of July, reaching a total installed capacity of more than 7,000 megawatts from 171 wind power plants. Okay, and you can see the increase, let's say, in the for every year, starting with 2008 to 2018 for the last 10 years. So it's a growing in capacity, and it will expect it to continue to grow. In this report, again, I will not go into details. You can see which company is making these installations, which company is selling the wind turbines, and the distribution per city. So where you can actually generate electricity more, maybe in with better economical terms. Oh, sorry. And here you see the operational wind power plants according to cities. Izmir, where I live, is leading the wind energy in Turkey, not only in terms of, but also most of the component producers are also here. So again, this is listed by the total capacity from Izmir to neighboring cities, Balıkesir, Manisa, which are sort of close, and Çanakkale to Istanbul. You can see that there is maybe 70% of roughly commercially available wind energy is on the western side of Turkey, close to the Aegean Sea, and distributed all along the west side of the country. So a bit about the legislative framework, but I have to be a bit quick, maybe on some slides. We have tried to make this, as easy as possible. But when there is a legislation, it's always some details and more details and more details. So just to keep things simple, I'm planning to skip some of these, come back later with questions, or send some things afterwards. For example, the legislative framework includes energy cooperative, renewable energy cooperatives, but they are excluded specifically from this presentation because it's a whole another issue. And we have this big mega-sized projects that I also choose to exclude from the presentation because they have it's a maybe I think it needs maybe a separate presentation. I don't think that would be easy to fit these in time. So just don't hesitate to ask questions. We can answer some of them in the QA phase, and maybe some of them later. So basically the structure is, the foundation of the legislative framework structure is based on some of these laws, which I'm not going to go in detail, but the motivation of them is to generate electricity from renewable sources, and with a certain level of energy efficiency always in mind. Energy efficiency law is integrated partially with the renewable energy laws in Turkey. And we also have an energy efficiency action plan in place. which is aiming to increase the utilization of the renewable energy in both buildings, industry, agriculture, and transportation sectors. So we will see more and more applications as compulsory audits in energy efficiency include not only big companies but SMEs in Turkey. We will have more opportunities to present to investors in the near future, in the coming years. That's I think, one of the major things that we have to keep in mind. So basically, you can think of the renewable energy just like in three models. Okay, we have this unlicensed electricity generation from renewable sources. We have licensed, and we have renewable energy zone models. The philosophy behind the unlicensed to the zone model, as you increase size, is that unlicensed is below 1 megawatts, but aiming mostly self-consumption. And it's getting more and more important as the feed-in tariff for current solar or renewable energy is just fading away, phasing out after 2020. There will be changes, and mechanism will most likely partially be in place. But the tariffs would obviously change, and there will be maybe some self-consumption quotations, not sure. But the motivation is that if it's a small-scale project, you should aim self-consumption. And if it's a mega project, then you obviously have to go for commercial and invest in even production in Turkey, which is also typically a part of these big tenders. So the unlicensed projects do not require establishment of a company. However, it is typically, if it's not a very small scale project, I didn't go in details of differentiating between very small scale projects that are 10 kilowatts, typically roof-type projects. Because when you are financing this project, if it's maybe it's like you have one company but more than 1 megawatt of installations in different places. So banks will ask for collateral, and financing would need some sort of balance sheet to justify the investment that is expected to be sustainable in the next 10 or 20 years. It would be a good idea to start a company like an SPV to specifically address these kind of investments. And SPV, by the way, means a special purpose vehicle, which aims that to start a company with let's say a special purpose. Okay, like these energy investments. And the investor needs to apply to the relevant network operator. We have these distribution companies in Turkey operating on a regional basis, but not for every city. For example, some distribution companies have more than one cities, and some distribution companies, like in Istanbul, have only half of the city, depending on these consumption regions, let's say. You need to apply with these following documents. By the way, these documents are available online, so you don't have to do anything. Just log into any kind of distribution company website, depending on the city you're selecting to let's say at least evaluating to invest, and download their application forms. It's a straightforward process to that point. But typically, most of the investors use consultancy companies to take care of these, details, not to, let's say, extend the application process. Because if you make a mistake at this point, then you will lose maybe 1 month to reapply, and then reapply and change things of necessary parts of, let's say, the application. The connection application form for unlicensed electricity generation, which is typically the form, basically, the original or certified copy of the title deed or rental contract for the project site. So you have to be responsible for the site. You cannot do this, without a rental contract or title deed. It's not possible. A single line diagram, which is basically an electricity map of showing your connection to the distribution network, and some internal details about the capacity of your inverter and the way you connect them. And the bank receipt of testifying to the payment of the application fee. The fact sheet of non-sensitive nature of location. This is important that your site for unlicensed project should not be a fertile cultural land. This is important. You have to get this from proper authorities, and this can take time. So you should never plan an energy investment in a agricultural land in Turkey and in anywhere of the world, basically. So also an environmental impact assessment exemption document from the Directorate of Environment and Urbanization. This is also an important document because if your project land is bigger than 20,000 square meters, for example, you are not exempt from this environmental impact assessment. It's important. And it is also important to assess the risk of your project, because if you can't get this kind of documentation, you can't go for an unlicensed project. We typically check these of paper and let's say exemption documents during the risk assessment of the renewable energy project as well. So it's a good idea to have start working on these as soon as possible if you are planning an unlicensed project. Make this general application process simpler and, let's say, maybe more easy to visualize. This is more or less like this. Days are stated in these the legislation and regulations involved in the application process, but they can change. If there's a regulation change, you can have, these are like the maximum days that you're allowed to do certain kind of things and the class to reply, but it's a good idea to be fast and, correct in the first day. So if you need maybe some changes in the project, it could be hard to finalize in 1 or 2 days, and you will lose maybe 6 getting all the done and so on. So it's a good idea to start early and with proper assessment done in place. So basically you apply to the distribution company, which is taking your applications. And typically this is like in the first 10 days of a month, and they have, you need to get a call letter, like an invitation from the company to start actual technical documentation and projects, and you have some days like to submit your applications. You have to include you have to include all the proper documentation in place, and then they have like 90 days to reply to you and say, okay, this is going to work, or no, you should change this or this, and this is not clear in the project, and you have to you have to resubmit them.
Onur, just to let you know, we have 4 more minutes and then we're gonna have to finish. So just
okay, I will try to be.
Thank you. We won't have time for questions, but as you said, people can contact you directly. That's fine. But at least
okay. I'll just speed up a little bit. And as you remember this slide, we have this unlicensed and then licensed model. Okay, so if you just skip to the license model, which is following this more or less the similar general application process. However, you need to apply for a pre-license. So it's based on the auction, and there's like a tender. Okay, you have to submit your documents. The major difference between this and the unlicensed one is that you have to do on-site metering of data, at least for a 1-year period, and this has to be from some sort of accredited company. which is important. Otherwise, your application will be rejected and you will lose a lot of time. The documents can, you can check the documents online, but the license fees are based on the total investment amount table that is also part of the regulatory framework. And then you get your pre-license, and you have like 24 or 62 to 36 months to chill project documents and start construction after getting approval. So just like I said, there are a bunch of documents which are include everything that you need to submit. And for only wind projects, for example, there is you have to get a technical interaction report, or that you have to declare that you don't have any interactions with the military and air services. This is only for wind plants that you have to keep in mind, which is not a part of the solar project documentation. And there is a way of calculating your fees based on the installed power, and I'm these details. Okay, you can find them very easily on the presentation, and you can do the calculations by yourself. This is not the hardest part. How to mention the incentives for both licensed and unlicensed projects? We have basically 5 types of incentives, which is the feed-in tariffs, the local content support, the acquisition of land, incentives for the usage fees, system usage fees, license fees, and fees basically, and taxes, and investment incentives. Categorically, this is already, I think, a part of Yael's presentation. We have a feed-in tariff for each kind of renewable energy source, okay? But you have to be, this will change after year 2020, and these are set to schedule for a maximum of 10 years from the operation date. This is important. You have to keep in mind that once you start your site, even if you don't apply to mechanism, your date actually starts. If you apply to feed-in tariff mechanism 3 years later, then you will have like 7 years left from this. It's important to keep in mind. That's why I made it in the bold. And for the local content support is like an extra bonus, okay, to get on top of the feed-in tariff. And you can have this some let's say local production certification from the producers. Typically, it's a part of their contract, and they can get this kind of local content support. You can adjust these amounts partially on your feed-in tariff. And in the acquisition of land, there is some discount in the permission fees by roughly 85%. And there is a way of calculating your license fees and taxes. You can get a real good exemption from these, like a discount, like by maybe even excluding 90%. And these are separate tables that I'm not going to go in details. And the major investments have some kind of incentives in Turkey. This is not specific to energy. This is including every kind of investment. It can be a construction and so on, but this is being used as a part of the renewable energy investments. You can get an exemption from custom duties and value-added tax exemption very easily. There are a lot of details, but these are 2 major exemptions that you can actually use as a part of your whole investment scheme in the project. These make projects really feasible. It's important to keep them in mind. And for the, I'm coming to the total market outlook, and I have only 2 slides, Ben and I promise, and you can find these invest.gov.tr to find, these have like an idea about how the market is going and where it comes from. This is a table you can count on to differentiate between the unlicensed market, licensed market, and the mega projects. Mean actually the projects I just mentioned about these renewable energy zones. These are really big projects, typically bigger than 1,000 megawatts, and you have to do. You are subject to these auction reverse auction, let's say, mechanism, plus some special conditions reserved for only that, like in R&D in Turkey, or investing in the production in Turkey, and so on. So this is basically for solar and wind, most of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adurin. Thank you very much, Yael. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're a little bit over time already, so we won't have time for questions today. But I'd just like to say thank you to the two of you for being speakers today, and also thank you to our audience, and see you next time. We will do a next one to catch up, because the future really looks promising here in Turkey. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.